Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Impact Room, where today I'm joined by Ric Kosiba, who is currently actually working for his own business at the moment with his son called Real Numbers, creating tools, analytical and planning tools for the contact center world. Ric has got years of experience within mainly in the contact center world, within resource planning, analytics, insight, operational support roles, both from a vendor perspective and within the operation. Obviously, I'll let Ric tell his story, but I'm sure you'll find this episode very interesting, very useful. So, Ric, thanks for joining us today, and appreciate you spending us time. Ric's joining us all the way from the land of the United States of America, so we appreciate that as well, Ric. So, Ric, obviously we've spoken numerous times now, and obviously. Hopefully, I know you wellish. There's always more and more we can learn about you, and I'm sure today we will. But do you want to give our audience a quick overview and a quick 2-minute kind of introduction to yourself?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Perry. This is really fun. I'm actually located in the middle of America, where I imagine most of your European folks have never visited. I'm in the land of Indiana, so smack dab in the middle of the flat part of the country. Really nice place, though. Really nice place. But about me, I'm married. I have 4 great kids. I've got 2 who have graduated college and are out in the real world. They're engineers. I've got another one who is a junior in college, who's a chemical engineering student. And then I have my youngest, my baby, about to go to college, and she's going to be not an engineer, but she's going to be a pilot. What else about me? I coached, if you can see in the background, I've got some pictures up, a lot of pictures of middle school football. I coached middle school American football for, 15 years or so. It's something that I really, really enjoyed. I haven't picked it up since we moved here to Indiana. But it's if I say what are the things that I enjoyed most, that's probably it. And the other thing about me is I think if I had a claim to fame when it comes to my career, I started off being an analytic person. I studied something called operations research, which is algorithm building. Basically, it's how do you apply math and engineering to business decisions. And at one point, I started a little company, and we built the very first contact center planning system. So hiring planning and what if analysis for contact centers. It was the very first one that was ever out there. We ended up selling that to the big company called Genesis, and later I left and I'm now starting something with my son and his friends. It's called Real Numbers.
Brilliant stuff. No, thanks for that introduction. So yeah. I mean, obviously, as you said, obviously you've been in contact center planning more specifically than kind of anything, but resource planning's all about the principles, all about the maths, all about the numbers. As you say, it doesn't matter whether it's a contact center you're planning for, an airport, a field engineers, warehouse, whatever, that's it. So really interesting, obviously, as you say, that you're focusing on the numbers, because that is what planning is all about. So looking back at your kind of your time and your experience and stuff, I mean, what contact centers didn't know what resource planning was, 30 years ago to what they know now, and no hint to your age there at all. But how did you get into what brought you into contact center planning? Because you say you were one of the first to bring this concept to life, really.
Yeah, it's actually kind of fun. I when I was a kid, graduated college, and I was an algorithm builder, and I got hired by an airline in the U.S., Northwest Airlines, which is now part of Delta Airlines. And I was hired to build scheduling systems for people at airports. So, like you said, it's all, different kinds of widgets, but widgets nonetheless. And I was building scheduling systems at a time when schedulers weren't really a thing. And did a great job. We had this really cool system that we built, and showed the bosses that saved the company a whole bunch of money. And they came to me and they said, hey, why don't you go over to the call center and talk to those guys? And there's a gentleman named John Nolan who gave me a tour of their contact center facility. I didn't know what a contact center was, call center was. And, talked to him about the stuff that I did. And he said, well, you know what? We have a scheduling system already. He says, it's called workforce management. I've never heard of it. He says, but could you help me figure out how to make that workforce management software create a budget. I assume it does it because it's very natural that it would do that, because you helped me with, figure out how to put together a plan, a hiring plan and a budget for the next, 2 years or so, because I have to do this. And so in those days, you had user manuals, and I got this big book, and I started thumbing through the big book, and I was looking for how to put together a plan, and I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't part of the system. And so I said, you know what, I'll just build you a spreadsheet. In those days, it was in Lotus 123. It's something, Perry, that you probably never heard of before, but it was one of the very first spreadsheets. And I built them a spreadsheet to help them put together long-term plans. And what was interesting is it was at that airline for a while. I went to a different airline, went to credit card companies, and at every single point, the people who ran the contact centers, they all said, yeah, I can do scheduling, but I don't know how to put together plans and budgets and do what-if analysis and such. So I brought my little spreadsheet knowledge out to all of them and helped them with that. And at the last airline that I worked for, I actually built a system, and a friend of mine and I built a system that helped them put together plans, and was very, very accurate. This is going to go a little long, but I was at a little credit card company, helped them put together, that was one of the things that I built. I built them a whole bunch of different little decision support things. But at the end, we got bought. And the company that was buying us was a big credit card company. And we were told if we stuck around for 4 months, we'd have this really nice severance package. So for 4 months, I didn't have anything to do. We were basically just maintaining this credit card portfolio. And a group of us got together and we said, hey, if we were to start a business, what would we do? Because we had nothing to do. And we ended up starting a little company. It was called Bay Bridge Decision Technologies. I started it with two of my friends. And one of the things that we talked about building was a resource planning system for contact centers. And we tested a whole bunch of different things. And that was the thing that seemed to have a lot of legs. And we ran that business for, 12 or 13 years before we got bought by the company that became Genesis.
Brilliant. Okay, fine. So,
yeah,
obviously, as you've already mentioned there, from airports to contact centers to obviously say, but nothing, as you mentioned, nothing really changed in the concept and the numbers and the data. It was similar processes that moved across all three. But what would you say is, obviously, as you mentioned, you moved, when you went into the contact center, I didn't understand this kind of long-term strategic planning approach, capacity planning, this what-if scenario. What would you say has been the biggest thing that you've learned along the way, or even seen around the importance of resource planning within these operations?
That's a great question. There's a few things that's sort of interesting about the contact center space, both before and now, which is because there really aren't tools that are there are some tools now there weren't when I started. But even still, you'd be shocked at how many big companies with call centers that have thousands and thousands of people still do their planning in spreadsheets. And it's because I think it's the thing that people are comfortable with. That, there's a lot of expertise in these spreadsheets. So a human, some planner will work at one company, develop a spreadsheet, and then I'll go to a different company and improve that spreadsheet, and those spreadsheets become the things. But they're really, really hard to work with. They're very complex. Think about all the math that has to go into it, and spreadsheets are just very, very hard to take complex things, because it's very easy to make a mistake. If I'm playing with Excel, I can screw something up pretty easily. It's also a very manual process, because you have to take data, feed it in, and do all that sort of stuff. But what's shocking about it is it's when you get to be my age, Perry, you'll see this, which is a lot of things that were old are new again, or it's, you think you've solved something and then it comes back around because it really isn't solved all along. There's companies that do a good job with it, and then but there's an awful lot of companies that are still using these old technologies, and that's sort of the way it is now. So the thing that's interesting about it is how still to this day, 20 years after we built the very first planning system out there, there's still many companies, big companies that we all know that are operating in spreadsheet land. So that's pretty interesting. The other thing is that if you can do a good job putting together plans, or if you have a process that's very good, there's these massive benefits associated with it. You can, when you think about it, I would say pretty much most contact centers have workforce management software, and workforce management software helps you schedule your employees and manage those schedules. But workforce management, the scheduling, basically operates in the realm of it helps you schedule the people that you have. So it says, I have 150 people, schedule them. Let's manage those 150 people pretty well. But the number 150 comes from some other process, and that's the spreadsheets. And so if you can do a better job of, if you can beat the spreadsheet, do a better job than the spreadsheet, what you can end up with is a much better resource allocation over time, because call centers change month over month, week over week. They have peaks and they have valleys, and it's a very complicated process. But if I do a really good job of planning, I manage to that demand curve much, much tighter and save a lot of money. So workforce management is almost solving the slightly wrong problem. It should help people figure out exactly how many people they need, as opposed to managing the people that they have.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, fine. Yeah. And you mentioned there about the tools and stuff, and obviously the advancements that you've seen in the tools over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, we're probably about to go through a huge transformation of tools as well, with AI and automation becoming an even bigger piece. I mean, where do you see, I suppose the question is, you to say, where do you see the benefits of automation within planning, and where do you see automation and planning, I suppose, coming into the Excel world, but also, we're seeing an advancements in, planning isn't just about, like you mentioned, it's not just about getting the people in the seats anymore. It's about having the right people in the right place at the right time, with the right tools, with the right skills, with the right information. Everything, what I mean? It's operational support now. So you've obviously got, and this is where obviously Real Numbers, the business you're setting up, is obviously developing more in the analytical and insight space to support planning, because it all becomes operational support. So I suppose, where do you see automation coming in to support and help grow, or where do you think the biggest benefit? The thing is, until we try it, we don't know the correct answer to this answer. So it'd just be good to get your opinion on where you see the biggest benefit of automation.
Sure. Well, let me tell you a story. So years ago, with my old tool that I built at Bay Bridge, we had a customer who was a large financial services company, well known. Everybody knows them, who bought our product, and a young guy, his name's Jeff. Jeff, he was in charge of managing that system, and so he learned it really well. He's extremely smart, articulate guy, just a terrific guy. He learned the system really well, and then he did something a little cocky. What he did is he sent up a report to his boss and his boss's boss and his boss's boss's boss. It's a hierarchical company. And he said, I have this new tool, and what it will help me do is, before I had spreadsheets, and it would take me a long time to put together a plan. With this new tool, I can actually crank through, I've automated the planning process, and I can within minutes, I can come up with a result. And not only that, but I've proved to myself that it's accurate, and let me show you how accurate it is. So in this presentation, he sent it up to the bosses. He didn't talk to them about it, he just sent up the report. And sure enough, about 3 weeks later, he gets a call from the big boss's secretary saying, hey, come up to the boardroom. We've got, can you bring your system up? They have some questions for you. So he came up to the boardroom, beautiful room. I've seen it, mahogany, all this stuff. And he sat down, and opened up his laptop, and the big boss goes, we're thinking about a hiring freeze. Is that something that you could, evaluate within your system? And the guy says, give me 5 minutes. Jeff says, give me 5 minutes. And he sits down and he zeroes out the number of hires in the plan, and he does some quick analysis, and he says, okay. 5 minutes later, He says, if we had a hiring freeze, here's what would happen. Within 3 months, our service levels would tank. The number of abandons would be north of 33%. Our agent occupancy, how busy our employees are, would be super, super high. So we'd probably see a whole bunch more attrition. And we would be in this state for many, many months, maybe up to 18 months or so. We would be in this, what they call a call center death spiral. Your agents are quitting. You can't hire them fast enough. You can't train them fast enough. And our service would be terrible over the next 2 years. And so the big boss goes, I can't have that. He says, well, Jeff says, well, what would you like me to do? He says, how about a half a hiring freeze? He says, all right. He sits down. He says, give me 5 minutes. Sits down and evaluates it. Goes through that automated the process. It says, okay, with half a hiring freeze, we'd be in the same situation, but it would take us 5 months to get there as opposed to 3 months. And so the big boss says, I can't have that either. So Jeff asked the smart question. He says, what are you trying to do? And the boss says, we've been told we have to cut $2 million out of our budget, and we thought a hiring freeze would do it. And so Jeff says, I'll tell you what. Can you give me till tomorrow morning? I'm going to go down to the basement where the planners are, and we will do some what if analysis. So what they did, they said, sure, and come down the next morning. We'll have the same meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. So Jeff went down. His team got together, and they went to a whiteboard and wrote down all the things that, if they could affect, would save the money. So, for example, if we reduced our handle times by 10 seconds or 20 seconds or 30 seconds, how much money would we save? If we could reduce our training time, how much money would we save? Or were some of the other, if we could divert more calls to self-service, here's what we do. Yeah. So basically just came up with a matrix of all the different things that they could do. If we could achieve these things, here's the money it would save. And the next morning he went up at 8 a.m. and he actually printed it up, and he says, here's all the different ways that we could save money. And so they said, now it's up to you guys to decide what is it that we think we could achieve. So it wasn't that he was saving money. What he was showing them the value of improving any of these aspects of the operation. So that at the end he said, if we can accomplish any of these or different combinations of them, then here's the value to the company. So in the end they said, if we did these things, then we will save $2 million, and it wouldn't affect service at all. Service would be fine no matter what. So that he just left it up to the decision makers to make the decisions, say, here are the things that we can affect. And they were able to do it. They were able to say, okay, let's, they did something, I don't know if when you call people, sometimes at the end of the call, they'll say, well, thank you so much for calling X company. If you would like to talk to us again, please dial 1-800, but it's just stupid dead time. It adds 30 seconds to call. If they got rid of that would save them money. If they did these other things, it would save them money. And they were able to save the $2 million and not affect service at all. And so the neat thing about it is that's the benefit of automating a process like this. If you had, our little system used to forecast everything that would go into a plan. It would then simulate and say, with these forecasts, here's what would happen to your operation, and then here's when and where to hire your agents to make it optimal, and then let's roll it into a budget. And you could do it in about 5 minutes, like this guy said. But the true benefit is better decision support. How do I go about giving the decision makers the information that they have so that they're not making a stupid decision, like having a hiring freeze at this particular place? So I do think, and you brought up AI, and AI is just another tool. It's the tools that I'm building with my son right now for real numbers. They are analytics that will simulate a contact center so that you can ask it questions and get back answers. And it's just we're using a modeling technology called discrete event simulation modeling. It's just a simulation tool. But AI is just another tool, and you can use it for a whole bunch of different things. I do envision a time when the AI, you ask it a question like, hey, how do I save $2 million? And it goes off and it runs through all of these different scenarios and brings them back to you. So there's a lot, and that's exciting because then you sort of take out the middleman, although I'm not so sure that that's always smart. But you certainly can use these technologies to help augment the decision making that you're already trying to make. So anyway, it's a good time. But again, a lot of the things that we're doing now are still things that we're doing before, albeit different techniques and better technologies, but still trying to solve very, very similar problems.
No, it's really true, isn't it? To say, a lot of organisations are going through a dramatic amount of change at the moment with the digital channels and obviously generative AI and chat bots, etc., coming in, and being able to, like you said earlier, encouraging self-serve, etc., etc. That the world is in a completely different place now to where it was just only a few years back with things, and and I think even the agent's job's becoming more difficult, because obviously the only time that people mainly ring these operations now is to complain or something that they can't do themselves, because people can self-serve a lot easier than previously. And I think as you say though, I think it is a really interesting time for the contact center world, or for whatever world it is within planning, because I do think that the principles of planning are obviously, every organization's going through, every organization's trying to be more effective and efficient. People are trying to reduce cost and improve profit levels. Don't get me wrong, not every organization struggled through COVID, but if we're having conversations with organizations that did really well through COVID, obviously now it's slips off a little bit. Now the market's settled down, etc., etc. We're still in cost of living crisis across the world. Like, we've got them here in the UK. I know we were talking a couple of weeks ago about kind of cost of living in America, etc., etc. And it is a really interesting time. But I suppose, and it does go back to the planning teams a little bit, to challenge the norm, to challenge what was the old way of working, or as you say, challenge some of these strategies with the numbers. So I suppose for someone that's about to go through 2024 at the start of the year was being tipped as the year of change. Obviously we're getting well through 2024 now, and even into 2025 plans. And what would you say to anyone in planning or operations or business leaders? What would be your, I suppose, top tips or steps that they could follow to ensure that they get the resource plan right? And I know, obviously, does that make sense? What?
Yeah, it does. So So there's two things that you triggered a thought that's sort of off left field for an American baseball analogy, and but the planning by itself has some basic steps. The first thing is you have to gather data, and the nice thing is that compared to what it was 20 odd years ago, getting data is actually a lot easier than it used to be. As a matter of fact, you can get to much more fine data. And so getting data is easier, but step one still is getting data. The interesting thing is, in the contact center space anyway, there's so many different ways of defining things, and different systems have different definitions of things. But so you have to have a smart person who says, okay, this is the way that we're going to make this all apples to apples, and get the data in here so it all makes sense, ties out. And you start with the data, you build models, you try to forecast the things that you can forecast, and AI is great for that kind of stuff. There's some of the old-fashioned, old-timey techniques, forecasting techniques are still great. The next thing you want to do is you want to take this information and say, okay, how do I understand the relationship between the number of people I have and the service I provide? And I would argue that you want to simulate that so that you can actually say, if I had more people, then here's what would happen to my service, here's what would happen to my abandons or my occupancy. And those simulation models help with all of that sort of stuff. Then the next step is, of course, saying, okay, now that I know this stuff, how do I ask the math or ask the AI to say, when should I hire people, knowing that there's learning curves and things like that. It takes people a little while, so that I can put together a plan and then roll it into a budget. And all of that is, you want to automate all of that. But the one thing that you said earlier, and I is there are, and again, the COVID reference actually was interesting, is how do we manage a workforce that's now sitting down in their basement like I am? And it's a harder thing to do. And one of the things that we did, I was actually working for a little company. It was called Sharpen. They were a CCAS company. I was working for them for a few years. One of the fun things that we did is we went back and we looked at all the old metrics that we measured people by, and say, are there things that agents do that affect CSAT, customer satisfaction? And so we had all this information about how satisfied the customer was at the end of every call via surveys and such. We said, okay, what matters to them? And there are some things that we tested that we thought for sure would matter to them. Like one of them was, are they put on hold? Okay, so if they're put on hold, does that affect CSAT? And lo and behold, it did not, at least in the data sets that we were looking at for our customers. And the other thing was, well, how long are you on hold? It's like, if does that matter? And lo and behold, it didn't. And we're like, oh, that's sort of strange. Well, how about how long the interaction is? How long is the call?
Yeah.
And we thought, okay, I don't want to be on a call with these people, right? When if I'm calling a customer service, I just want my question answered. Let's check that. Nope, didn't matter at all. And what we found is the thing that mattered most was, did I have to call back? That was it. Super simple, simple thing, true. Right? Now, when you think about it, most operations, call centers specifically, they've been measuring something called first call resolution or first contact resolution for years. They've been measuring it. And the way they measured it was they would send out a survey and say, did they handle your call?
Calling first time, yeah.
Yeah. The problem with it is not many people respond to those surveys. And I would argue that probably a lot of them don't respond to it honestly. It's like, yes, or okay. I like the agent. Yeah. I want to give them a good score because that person was nice, even though this whole process was terrible, whatever it was. And so what we ended up doing is, because we have all this data, we could go in there and we could say, let me check for every specific agent how well they're doing on their particular calls. If I speak to Rick, does the customer call back more often or less often? And so we created a new metric. We called it active contact resolution but it was geared on each particular agent. What we found is that there was a wide variety of performance amongst the agents for different types of calls that they would take. And what we found is that mattered to, when I plot ACR, active contact resolution, against CSAT, huge change. So that's interesting, right? So that is the metric. That is the sort of cool metric that you can play with. And if I can improve that, I can improve a lot of things. And so what we did is we did something simple. We started showing agents their score. We told them it was important to their company, and we started displaying it to them, saying, here's what your ACR score is relative to your peers and relative to some goal. And you could look at the performance, and the moment we turned that on and told them about it, the performance did this. Bink! It went right up a straight curve. Really all we did was show them their performance. Yeah, and it was shocking. We saw an improvement of around 5 to 15% every single time. Oh, the biggest ones we saw it twice. We saw it at 18%. So if I can improve this active contact resolution, the individual performance of each agent by 18% for the organization, what it meant was I'm getting CSAT will go up because it's highly correlated to CSAT. And the second thing is the number of people who call me goes way down because they're not calling us back. So if I can improve it by 18%, I improve the efficiency of my operation by 18%. That's something that when you think about all the technologies that the contact center vendors are trying to sell you, a lot of it, this AI stuff, is trying to get calls answered by somebody other than the agent. By showing agents their ACR score, what we see is you improve it more than you do with these chatbots. You improve it more than that, and the customers are happy about it. I don't want to talk to a chatbot, but I really like to talk to an agent who can answer my question and have me not call back. So something so simple and so basic as showing agents their score, keeping their contact resolution differently than the way that call centers traditionally do it, can improve the operation and improve the customer experience a ton. So I don't know if I may have gone way off field here, Perry.
That's true. It's true, isn't it? And I think,
Yeah.
as you say, I think, like we mentioned at the very top of this call, that the planning role has evolved dramatically from 25 years ago when, it was it was a scheduling function that, as you say, sat in the basement and, we forgot about, and they'd be the people that, declined your holiday and whatever else, and no one liked planning because they just declined your holiday and, and whatever else. Where actually now the planning is bigger than just scheduling and ensuring you had your schedule every week. It is becoming this operational support function that is supporting the agent to do a better job, like you said, giving them the right information, giving them the right data, telling them about their day, etc., etc. It's supporting the business to make the right business decisions with the right data and insight. And let's say, and actually, like you said, it's all about the sourcing of the data and stuff. And yes, obviously, data will generally sit under a chief data officer, not under planning. But as you say, there is this close link now with planning across the whole business. To say we're actually seeing it a lot more now, where planning, like you mentioned at the very start of this conversation around, finance the budget. It's actually now it's planning that are dictating the budget a lot more, and obviously finance are then agreeing or whatever from there. There is this bottom up type of planning more than top down planning that we're seeing a lot more of now. So yeah, it is really interesting to see obviously the development, and that's really interesting. Obviously, as we got through this conversation, you were talking more and more and more around analytics and insight and performance and obviously, as I say, helping with decision making. Where obviously at the start, when we were talking about the start of your career, it was all about forecasting and planning and ensuring, do we have enough people, etc., etc. Where that's huge transformation into this, let's say, this new evolving operational support function. Where, as you say, and like even like you say with customers' feedback and stuff. Yes, customer feedback surveys still go out now and can be very useful, and obviously we do a lot in the customer insight space and stuff. But as you say, there is so much internal data now which feeds into the customer data, and you can get the answers quick. It is just that piece of with live AI and data and insight and whatever else. As I say, and I completely agree with the AI piece. I think obviously if AI can sit there and watch the data live to then flag to you, oh, this is going on and whatever else, and and I think it's really interesting conversation. Actually, I think you've touched on a few pieces there to give people food for thought, and I'm sure we could dig into some of it even more. But actually, I think I think you've given a great overview and just something to give people a thought of, and just think about, what are the bits we're not doing, or what are the bits that actually, and I love that last piece that you mentioned there around obviously just telling the information to the agent, because that was something that I remember when I've been working in the contact center industry 10 years. I mean, I actually did my degree 15 years ago in contact center. My dissertation was on contact center motivation. So
by the way, Perry, that by itself is one of the most fascinating things to me. It's like, you're probably one of the only people on the planet who actually went to college to learn about contact centers. The rest of us just sort of trip into it.
I didn't plan to. It was one of them where my dissertation ended up. I was doing it on motivational strategies, and I managed to contact a HR department that gave me access to their contact center. Don't know what it was. I was just after HR. It was just after motivation. I said, we have the contact center motivation goes up and down like anything. It's the worst. It's kind of, from a HR perspective, it's an absolute nightmare to try and manage for motivation in the contact center. Well, all right, okay. So I was like, I'll do it on that then, and anyway, did my contact center motivation strategy, and it was really interesting. I say, and then 3-4 years later, I ended up working in contact center. So it was which wasn't the plan, but it was. I fell into it from an earlier age than many.
And you can never escape. That's the thing, is you trip into it and you can never escape. You're a contact contact person for life. It just is.
Well, that's it. That's it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's it. I do a lot more. I do a lot more work now in the field and the airports and warehouses and stuff. Because
Yeah.
say the principles are the same in planning, but yeah, the contact center does always keep pulling at you, and say you're kind of a big part of our world, and that's it. But as I say, I think the thing is, and I think the contact center planning functions like we've mentioned, because of the access of the data. I've worked with like retail planning and stuff, and they just don't have the access to the data the contact center space has. They've literally got to stand there sometimes with a stopwatch and time how long someone walks into a shop, how long they spend in each section of the shop, and how long they walk out to work out their average spend, etc. There is too much, unless you, I mean, obviously I know there is more advancements now in technologies to time these stuff instead of stand there with a top watch, which say the contact center data is so live. And I think it is true, the advancements we can have in contact centers now, it is really exciting. And obviously it's only going to get even more exciting with the more and more data. And it was an interesting point you made around the gathering of the data, because actually you can't do this without the right data. And actually I think this is the biggest mistake a lot of people make when it comes to, and I'll come away from just the word planning here, and I'll use that operational support piece. When it comes to, like you mentioned, the analytics, the insight, the trends, the plans, the forecast, the capacities, the strategies, it's actually the data's in such a mess that it's going to take so long to get to where they want to. You sort your data out first, and make sure your data is in a nice, uniformed, easy to access place. Because if not, even if you hire the best analytical insight planning people in the world, it's going to take so long to get to the answer. Like you said, the big takeaway from me from Jeff's conversation was he had access to the data, he had access to the information. I mean, all he had to do was sit there. The tool was built, obviously, because he and the team had built it. But, within 5 minutes, he could change a few numbers and he got the information. But that was not possible unless the data is feeding in smoothly to his tools and and that tool doesn't matter whether it's set in Excel or set in, the big WFM vendors or whatever it is, or whether it's sat in, there's tools out there now just for capacity planning and financial tools, or whatever, wherever it's sat. But it's got to sync well with the data. No, brilliant stuff. I really enjoyed that conversation. I hope you did yourself.
Yeah, this is great. This is great.
I don't know if there were, if you've got kind of any final notes you wanted to add to what you've said, or to summarize yourself. But hopefully it's given a lot of people a lot of food for thought to think about, and kind of, it was great to live your journey through, and I'm sure a lot of people will be able to resonate with your experience.
Yeah, so it just I say this anytime, but I speak in public, is there's nobody on the planet who enjoys this more than me. I absolutely love this stuff, and if you have any kinds of questions around planning or anything around contact centers, data, metrics, whatever, I would be thrilled to get on a call and just BS with you about it, and tell you what some of my, I love telling stories, obviously. And so by all means, look us up, realnumbers.com. There's a little button that says create a meet, chat with Rick, and you can click a button and then we can set up some time together. And I'd be happy to learn about you. I like to learn about it and hear about business problems that people have, and maybe I could help you guys out too. So I'd be thrilled to chat with you guys further if anybody wants to do that.
No, thanks for offering that, Rick. And and obviously, we'll stay in contact, and obviously I'm sure there'll be other things that we'll get involved in the near future. Obviously, if there is anything, where we are, Rick, and I'll end the impact room there. But Rick, thank you very much for sharing your experience. I look forward to speaking to you soon.
Thank you so much. This has been really fun. Thank you, Perry.